You're listening to The Practice of a Hoodoo Baptist, my personal journey of root work, faith, and ancestral wisdom. This is where I honor the ones who came before me and share what's been passed down and walk you through my experiences of being unapologetically aligned, covered by spirit, guided by blood. Today, I have a very special guest. I have the privilege of having Dr. Ayoka Wiles, who is a scholar, spiritual practitioner, and author of I Hear Olofi Song, a collection of Yoruba spiritual prayers for Egun and Orisha. The book is a heart deep offering of ancestral prayers. She was born and raised and immersed in Yoruba culture. She brings ancestral resonance to her writing, scholarship, and prayer. With a PhD in public policy and 2 decades in nonprofit and arts leadership, she truly amplifies the voices of Black women through writing and prayer as survival and liberation tools. Please welcome Dr. Ayoka Wiles. Hi, how are you?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful.
Thank you
I'm
so
blessed.
much. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast with me. I know we're brand new, but I'm so excited to have you. I really do appreciate it. I do want to tap into your book really quickly, as it was the introduction to, well, my introduction to you. I received this book from Chantrell P. Lewis, who's a great friend and mentor of mine, by going to Buku Hoodoo Fest the first year we had the festival, and I was gifted your book, and and for a while my mother stole it from me. I had to get my copy back because it was, but yeah, she we both really enjoy it, and I love how you have it like sectioned off where it's different prayers, just kind of for the different moments, different situations. And I really want to get into really quickly what inspired this. And I want to make sure, was this your very first book?
Yes, yes.
Okay. What
It's my
inspired
very
it?
first that I've written. That's just me. Um, the inspiration for the book came from um my mother. So I was born and raised in, as you mentioned in your introduction, I was born and raised in the Yoruba tradition, and what that means is that my family, my father, introduced a tradition, the Yoruba tradition, to my mother at age 15. My parents, my father's deceased, my mother is still alive, but my parents were pioneers, Pan Africanists. They were artists, and as a part of that introduction, they were. My father was a percussionist, my mother is a singer, my father and a dancer. And during the 50s and 60s, when a lot of African Americans, Caribbeans, people in the diaspora were reclaiming their cultural identity. Part of that was there were several tracks. Folks were taking the track on whether they were artists, whether they were educators, whether they were political activists, whether they were writers, right? The Black Arts Movement, all those movements. And a part of that was a deep undergirding that was people also embracing African spirituality. So during that time period, in the embracing of African culture and African traditions and African arts and language and the African aesthetic deeply, right, was this deep understanding of African spirituality. So from birth, my parents introduced the tradition through music and dance. So I've been a dancer since I was 2 years old. And my mother had been singing for rituals, ceremonies, on stage, and in sacred space since she was 15, 16, 17 years old. And so for me, my first understanding, my first contextualization as a child of spirituality was through music and was through song. And so I believe that in the womb, because my mom was singing and dancing with me when she was pregnant with me. So I believe
Wow.
that my first iteration of what God was, of what the universe meant, of what prayer meant, came through song in the womb. And I remember not even understanding Yoruba language because, of course, we didn't speak Yoruba. We got, words and things like that. But I understood the feeling, the connection came through song. She would sing in the house. She would sing in, all the spaces that we were on stage and in sacred space. These were my first memory. These were my first impressions from birth and into childhood. So when I say I hear Olofi song, Olofi is another word. We also say Olodumare, Elodumare for God, right? Actually, it's not really. There's a more, Yoruba language is more expansive. English is kind of, kind of doesn't allow for the really contextualization of, because Olodumare is divine consciousness. Olofi is another iteration of that. So it's to break it down in summary was that first iteration of me understanding the divine consciousness and its an expression was through songs. I hear Olofi song is that I hear God, I hear divine consciousness through song. I hear and I'm able to praise that consciousness.
I love that. Thank you so much for going into depth with your response. No, seriously, because one of my goals, as I may have expressed to you when we spoke previously with this podcast, is to not only educate people but also to bring more understanding and eliminate that stigma that still resides within, I guess, over African traditional religions, derived religions, and other spiritual practices like across the diaspora. And I think with people understanding other folks' interpretations of God, of the divine, it's really beautiful, and how we're all, it just kind of brings more to perspective how we're all connected. And yeah, it's especially when we're talking about language, because I love how you explained how within the Yoruba language and the tradition, it's not as limited as when we're talking, as far as English, when we're talking about God. And yeah, I think there's always this people trying to get or understand, because even when we're talking about certain words, like I'm familiar, like Olodumare, Orisha, and Lofi, and even like the word Ashe. I've noticed that the word Ashe is told. She's laughing already. Even the word. Can you define in your own definition? Can you even like define, for example, like that word Ashe? Because I think that word in particular, besides seeing it online a lot more often, people are really trying to gather more of an understanding, like what does that mean? Is it like a amen? Is it the African amen? Is it like a namaste? Is it, it's as silly as this sounds, I have heard this question before,
I
but can
understand,
you,
and I
yes.
yeah, and I get, as human beings, we want to do. We need in our way of knowing and being and to understand how the world works. We need something to compare it to. So often we use other examples, other traditions, other lexicons, and praxis to understand a concept. But sometimes we have to decolonize our minds by leaving those concepts within the place that they stand and understanding the concept as it is. So I wouldn't put it in comparison, but I would say that in the same vein of that, those terms of namaste, of amen, is to bring a notion of all that is shall be, and all so let it be so, right? And so that we understand that the consciousness of Olodumare, of divine consciousness, allows for through breath, through Oriman, or the word, for things to be so. And that consciousness didn't come necessarily first, like that in Christianity, one would say that happened first. I'm really not here to debate what came first, but that concept is an African concept. But
Yeah.
the notion is that Ashe is many things, but it's the notion that energy is a place, is metaphysics. There's energy, and energy can be changed and shifted, and energy can be transformed. And so, as when we say Ashe, we are affirming that whatever we said before it and after it shall come into fruition. Ashe is also the points within our body and our spirit that gives power to our brain, our functions, our lungs, different points that gives energy to, our third eye, our mental capacity, our spiritual capacity, our emotional capacity. Ashe is also the thing that we invoke to ignite and to remedy. Ashe is also the thing that invokes medicine within ourselves and community. So I can go on and on, but I think it's an expansive term that I love that so many people have embraced it, even without knowing it, because even in that, you've also embraced the power of it. So,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree. Yeah, I do find something. I find the positivity in that, and because I think it also it shows how folks really want to, some people want to learn, they want to know,
Yeah.
and they want to find more of a connection, and and don't feel super negative about it. I haven't
Right.
really come across anyone that has any type of negativity about it. It's just more of just trying to have a better understanding, and not really arguing, especially when folks do make a statement or say something, and they declare and they say Ashe, or it's after a prayer, especially after a prayer. So I do find that to be super positive. Who, if you don't mind me asking, who, because you explained as far as your family dynamic, and how and I love how you expressed how dance, essentially it's like a spiritual ritual for you, and how you learned so much through your mom and your father. I want to ask, who taught you how to pray? I understand how, even with I'm sure, watching your mother, watching your mom dance, and her singing to you, and you having this understanding through through movement, essentially. So I'm wondering how, or if there was some type of shift for you when it came to speaking, and then we're getting to your writing. But who taught you how to pray, and whose voice do you hear when you pray?
That's a good question. I'm gonna and I've never been asked that question. Um, so I'm gonna answer the first question about who
Yeah.
taught me how to pray. Um, I think, I think that I really don't have a memory of who taught me. I know that there's a couple of memories that come to mind. I think my observation of worship and my observation of prayer came from my parents, in particular my father. My father was was deeply, both my parents, but my father was deeply spiritual, very communicative and expressive, no, not only as a musician but as an orator. He was, he would sit down and have a conversation with you, and you should expect to be sitting for some time.
Okay.
It wasn't just going to be, you asked him a question about explanation or something, it was going to be, some time. But, I am so grateful for that experience because my father died, and I only was able to experience him for 24 years. He died when I was 24, but those were such rich and beautiful 24 years. He imparted so much knowledge and love and grounding for me. But then I also observed prayer from my grandmother, his mother. She was Catholic, but she was devout Catholic. And although I didn't go to, church in the way that others might have, not very frequently, but and I didn't have too much grounding there, but I think it was from that. And then there were other experiences, I think, that I myself started seeking. I mean, I don't know what was in me as a child. Like, I picked up, my mom had the book Creative Visualization, and I started reading it when I was like 12 years old. I was just so
Wow.
intrigued. I remember being in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and there was this woman, Miss Peony. She was an elder lady, and I don't know if she was literate or not, but she used to ask me, and I was like 9 years old, she would, sometimes she wasn't feeling so well on some days, and they were living in the country in Portland, and I mean, she had like a 2-room house, and she asked me to read the Bible. And here I am. My mom doesn't even know where I am because, in those days, you just go and then you come back when the street, before
The street
the
lights
sun
come
comes
on.
down,
Yeah.
right? And even in the country, right, we didn't even have street lights. So it's like when the sun
Yeah.
goes down. So I'm here. I'm reading the Bible to Miss Peony. And I don't even know what I'm saying, but I know that there's something powerful in what I'm saying, and I know that she's asking me to pray for her, right, from this book. And I don't recall all that I'm saying at all, but I know that this is something that's meaningful to her, that's important. And I don't know why she chose me to read the book, but I read it to her. So these are like early memories, and I remember just meditating and using here I am in second and third grade. So what are you, like 8 and 9 years old? I'm meditating. I'm picking up things to make an altar in my room. And these are first iterations, and I think they came from observations, but also my own spirit seeking some level of connection, right? I think those are like my first kind of memories. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And and also as you were talking, it brought up a couple of memories for myself. My parents, I want to say specifically my father and my father's mother taught me how to pray. I was primarily raised Christian Baptist, but however, I will say though, I have a lot of different spiritualities and followers of people who follow different religions within my family. Like, I have an aunt who's Jehovah's Witness. I have a grandpa who was with the Nation. I have, just different people who kind of walks of life. And I find that to be a blessing, and I think that's a huge reason why I had no problem making friends with someone who was Buddhist, making being cool with someone who's Muslim or whatever. And and I always thought that it was important to just read different books, whether it was the Bible, the Quran, or whatever, and then also just being young and just processing that the words that I'm saying are powerful, like not really knowing, like how you say you weren't really sure what you were saying, and you just felt it and knew that it was powerful. The second question was, whose voice do you hear? And I'm not even sure
Oh yes, I'm
if you
sorry.
don't have an answer. No, it's okay,
Mm.
because I love like that story. But I don't know if even if that's like a hard question, or you're not even sure if there is a voice that you hear when you pray. I mean, of course, when you're young, you're like, it's me. I'm reading. I don't know.
Well,
I'm just thinking. My conscience.
well, it's hard to answer that question because I think there's two parts to that question is whose voice do you hear when you pray, and whose voice do you hear who answers your prayers, right? And so when I pray, I mean, obviously I'm speaking and I hear myself. And then when I'm silent, I think there's different modalities and different energies that I'm able to tap into. And so that depending on the intention of the prayer, that's what I'm hearing. But it's very intentional. And it comes through a strong spiritual practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my first, I guess you could say, interviews or session that I reviewed of yours was through Miss Kat Nyambi, who's the Hungry
Mm-hmm.
Medium. And I'm also going to have her as a guest, and I can't wait. But I really enjoyed your session with her where you were talking about prayer, and I thought it was really cool the way that you both kind of approached it as if someone was watching that session who may not be completely, maybe let's just say, confident in their prayers or the way that they pray. Not necessarily someone who's like, I don't know how to pray, but the way and how you taught and gave that session, would help someone that may not feel confident when they pray or how they pray, but also just not understanding, how much power their words may even have. And
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely one of my like favorite, things to watch during the
Oh,
pandemic. Yeah, for sure. Like it truly was because you talked about how our words are powerful, and it is okay to use certain words in prayer, and as far as even we're talking about like invoking, declaring, affirming what you're saying. And and I because I think a lot of folks, or even I guess I can give like example from me. Like I remember being little, and my understanding of prayer was just, pray for thanks, and then pray for what you need. And that's kind of it.
right.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, like thank you God, but I need this, and I want this, and then it become, I want this, I want this for Christmas, I want this. So yeah, that's, when as a kid, that's kind of, from what I remember, how, because so that's why I'm always curious with other people as far as like who taught them how to pray. When did that kind of like shift for them, from making, just kind of simple prayers of thanks, or just even just simply saying the Lord's Prayer, but then, eventually like shifting to where they feel confident to actually like speak from their heart and really, really believe in what they're saying, even if they're talking about themselves and being thankful. Can you take us back to like the first time you realize your words, whether they were words that you written down or spoken words, but the first time you realize your words could shift something spiritual or emotional, whether it was something within you or around you, like if you have that memory.
Wow. I mean, there's so many memories. I think that early on, I mean, I go back to my childhood because, I mean, there was something about the way in which, um, the way in which my parents, my community, um, embraced children at that time, and that, we were a part of, a spiritual practice where we were told, um, and I don't even know if we were told. I think we were there and we were encouraged and we were shown certain things, and so the lessons that were learned were very participatory. Let's put it like this, as opposed to like, I try to describe it like less. I sorry to do comparison. I said I wouldn't do it, but like, since
Okay.
you go, children go to Sunday school. We didn't have like Sunday school per se, right? Our learning was very hands on. So we're involved in, and embraced, and we're in the midst of, what's happening. But I think those all of my early experiences lend itself to, you know what? It really, I think one of the earliest memories is connecting with nature. And because the way in which how the Yoruba tradition is framed is that no matter, this is what my father taught me, is that no matter where you are in the world, that God can hear you. That Olofi will hear you, Olodumare will hear you. So even if you're you're not at home or in a place of a sacred space, if you're by a tree, if you're at the ocean, if you're at the river, if you're in the mountains, that any one of those places can be a portal, a vortex, a place is a place of worship that connects to divine energy. So I used to, anytime I went to the beach, I would go and I'd get a shell. I'd find a shell and I'd talk to the shell and I'd say whatever I wanted,
Wow.
and pray, and then I'd throw it as far as I could. I'd go to a river and I'd pick up a stone and I'd say something, or I'd pray in front of the river, or if I was on a mountain, wherever I was, And so as a child, play and pray became synonymous, right? So here I am playing in the water at the beach, but I'm taking a moment as a child to give gratitude, to thank, to acknowledge, and so that became a part of my practice. Like not an intention, like here's my practice. It just became something I did.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just normalized for you
Yes.
very early on, to where you didn't, none that said that you knew a difference, but it was just like, no, this is it. Like this is life. This is how I interact and engage. And I think it's really cool how you talked about like just being brought up in nature and understanding you're one in nature, and there was no separation,
No.
of the two. And I think, what, in my opinion, I think that's where, a lot of us, I think as a community, Black people, where we kind of like that, because we have been separated, or we believe or weren't taught that we're all one with nature, and then everything's so separate. I think that's why we have, a lot of the demonization of natural things, even like herbs. Like I think I'm quite tired of arguing with people online. I stopped arguing with people online about, herbalism or herbs being
Yeah.
demonic, and all these things. But yeah, and I've always said, like, yeah, it has to be because the person, wasn't brought up and raised in the way to where they have this understanding of all these living things, like even like with one of my grandparents, who wasn't necessarily like on the hoodoo side. Like my on my mother's side, we had a hoodoo practitioner, or a few, but on my father's side, it was primarily, Baptist. But even like with my grandfather, who was Baptist, he did not play about like cutting trees down. So it's like there's trees in the backyard
Yeah.
and front yard
Yeah.
that have been there since when he was a kid, and just very much believed in being out in the garden barefoot, putting your hands, in the dirt, and planting things, and yeah. So to me, but it's kind of funny. I just thought about it. And then also the same grandpa we loved to take me fishing. We would go fishing. He also loved to hunt deer. That was the first time I tried deer and rabbit, and it was very traumatizing. But it was just like, okay, this is what we're doing. Like, oh, all right, you know. But it was super. But I remember even being super conscious about, like, you know, we're going out hunting, catching them, but we're gonna respect them. We're gonna pray over them. We're gonna, you know, apologize. We're gonna thank the Lord, and, you know, talked about just kind of this cycle of life and everything. So to me, I just didn't really think of, you know, animals or plants or, you know, anything out in nature. I almost thought as if they were kind of a little more, not necessarily more important than me, but they were essentially just as important, if not a little bigger, of because of the way and how, you know, they live, some of them live longer than us, you know, and they
Yeah.
have these talents and, you know, abilities that we don't have. So yeah, it's definitely a blessing to kind of come up in that way, I think, and I look at it as an advantage today, you know. And it's kind of hard even to tell, because I've been trying to, well, I have been talking to my god kids about prayer and manifestation and writing things down. And I low-key gave up on trying to teach them cursive. They looked at me crazy. Like,
That is a lost art. I mean,
it's
writing. I mean, you may not be able to get them to do cursive, but writing, yes.
yes,
Um,
super important, because I think, you mean, and it's just trying to get them to write for themselves, and not necessarily just for homework or just for school, but really to, like,
yeah.
write things down, to, you know, plan and have a, you know, a different approach to when they're writing for themselves, writing in their journal, writing in their planner. Because I was a big writer as a kid. I was also a big, I think it's a huge reason why I also was a big reader as a kid, and still to this day, you know, love writing things down or making some type of marking somewhere, not just on a
Yeah.
computer or iPad or iPhone, but in
Yes.
notebooks. I even have I call it my root book, because it's literally just a book that I have. That's where I write my prayers. That's where I write all my grandma's recipes, auntie's
Yes.
recipes,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
other elders that have, you know, taught me, like, how to get rid of a headache or a
Yes.
cramp or
Yes.
whatever it is. I just write it in that book, specifically, because I do look at writing as if it is I believe it's a sacred act
Yes.
for
Yeah.
myself, and also, you know, you know, for other people. Is there well, I guess I should start off with, when did you fall in love with writing?
Um, it reminds me of, like, when did you fall in love with hip hop?
Yes, I do want to go there. I do want to go there,
I fell in love with
it can start
writing.
anywhere.
I know. I fell in love with writing, I think, early on. As I got my first journal when I was probably about 10 years old, from a theater teacher. And I'll never forget. And it had, like, a lock and a key. And I was so excited to have received this journal. And this journal became what has become a series of a number of journals that I continue to write in till this day. So I have been writing in a journal and
Wow.
writing my thoughts. And in the beginning, I used to write about my day at school, you know, and I would, and then I read The Color Purple. And I remember how The Color Purple would start off, where she would write, Dear God, right? And then I said, well, I'm going to start to write Dear God. So then I started writing Dear God, and then I started to say, well, then I started thinking in my teenage years, you know, it was more so like I would write about, like, all the things that were going wrong or the things that I was upset about. And then I said, you know, one day somebody's gonna find. I don't know. I remember reading the Diary of Anne Frank, and I was like, someday somebody's gonna find these journals, And they're going to think that I'm just this poor, distraught girl who never had any joy in her life. So I need to balance that out. So then I would start to write about all the good things, like my grades, or if something I had accomplished. I would
Okay.
write, of course, about boys or heartbreaks and all that. And so, but anyway, as time progressed in college and moving on, I just continued to write. And when I started, the book that I wrote, I Hear a Lofi Song, started from me writing in my journal. Those prayers were actual prayers that I was speaking to God, speaking to Olodumare, speaking to Olofi, my own personal um, affirmations, requests, inner thoughts. Those were those first iterations. Those actually came from my journals. So those words in those pages, it was a very vulnerable moment because I remember saying, I don't know if I want to publish this because this is such a personal thing, because these are words that actually came out of my own personal journals that were, that you don't share, that, are like locked away, like in the early days of when I first had it, like with the lock, the proverbial lock and key, right? That you don't share with anyone, and that these are places, because writing was medicine. Writing was medicine, and that book was and continues to be. I didn't know what that book was going to mean for really anybody or any. I wrote it in 2010. I published it in 2010. It has I self-published, and as a book of prayers, and not a book about a spiritual tradition that talks about Yoruba tradition. I broke even on that book in 6 months, and I think when
Wow.
you self-publish, you maybe sell a couple of hundred copies. I printed 5,000 copies of that book. They showed up at my doorstep, and that was like 500 bucks. I was like, what am I gonna do with all these books? Oh my God. But and then I'm on a second iteration of publishing. I have no more physical copies, so they're just I sell them in a different way. But I say that all to say is that I did not know what that book was going to mean, but I knew what those prayers meant for me. I didn't know what the book was going to mean for others. I knew what the book meant for me. And I
Yeah.
knew that the ancestors, Olodumare, wanted me to share that book as medicine and healing for others, because it was healing me. I was in a very bad place. I'll say in a very I was in a place where I was in a relationship and marriage that was very troubling, and I was in a lot of pain, and I was trying to figure out which way to go, to stay, to leave, to figure out what was my next best step for me. And I didn't know quite yet what to do, and I didn't know quite yet how to do it, and what was the right answer for me. And so I asked the ancestors, I asked Orisha through writing over and over and over in a book to get as close to the essence of what I thought would capture the energy of that to heal me. So when I was speaking to Oshun, I was asking Oshun, her representation is the river. And I was asking her that just like her river is a mirror, help me to look inside myself, that my body is much like a river, that it's a mirror, that I can see inside myself and see so deeply of who I am that I can return to myself and find agency in myself so that I can be empowered to move on. Right? I was asking
Yeah.
the ancestors from Jamaica, from Congo, from Benin, from Senegal, Mali, all these Ghana, all these places that are embedded in my bloodstream, those of which I knew and which I didn't, with your strength, your might, all the things that you were able to overcome that
Mm-hmm.
were even more than what I'm experiencing now, even though I'm feeling an energy of confusion or pain or disarray, that energy that allowed you to overcome and to survive helped me to survive this situation so I can move forward. Help me to
Mm.
survive this situation so that I can be healed, so that I can continue to move forward to my next
Mm-hmm.
iteration and evolve to what I'm supposed to be in this world.
Mm. Ashe. Wow. 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 That actually answered my next question because yeah, because well, my next question was going to be like, how do you approach writing as a sacred act? But in a sense, well, actually, I feel like you answered it because you talked to your ancestors, even though you were feeling what you were feeling, and you weren't necessarily sure of like the direction you were going to take with the book or how the book was going to impact you or anyone. But you still had faith and asked for help and guidance and really believed in yourself and put all of that into a prayer and was able to just write. Yeah, I think that story will definitely help anyone who may be feeling something similar, especially if they're moving into like a different whether it's a different career path or they're just trying to shift gears on their personal life. And especially now because it seems like, well, it doesn't seem it today it's so much pressure to monetize everything. There's so much pressure to just be creative and create, do. And yeah, and I think a lot of folks just really want to who are writers just want to express themselves. They just have something that they want to say. But I'm super grateful that you received that call and you kept going, like that perseverance. You just had that strength to actually say no. I'm not sure how this is going to look or what is about to do, but however I'm doing it. But I thank you for that because like I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm a big reader, and I think something I think you should know. I think this book is also a really good introduction to someone who may not be familiar with Yoruba traditions. And I say that because even like with my mother being as well versed as she is and having such a nice handful of friends from all over the world, speak different languages, this was a really great for her, she because she mentioned how it's the prayers are so beautiful. And it's like if you're going through anything or any a moment in life, whether someone just passed, if you're not feeling your best, if you want to just have a prayer for meditation, if you want to learn more about the orishas, like this is such a great introduction, I think, to anyone that just wants to engage more within the culture and to learn. So I thank you seriously for this
Yeah.
because this is
Thank
really
you.
is really really beautiful. Um, yeah, I guess before we wrap up, I do want to know though, like getting your business a little bit. What are you working on? Are you gonna is there another book coming? Are you writing again? And what's the tea? Like what is the next book about? Or is there a next book? Like come on, give it to me.
Um, I have been toying with writing another book, and I haven't yet put my pin on what it's going to be.
Mm.
Um, and but I do know that what it's going to be is going to be authentically me.
Mhm.
Um, and so for the last 7 years, I've been deeply embedded in a couple of things. One, getting a PhD in public policy and administration, and my
Mm-hmm.
research, is focused on Black women, nonprofit executives,
Mm-hmm.
and the way in which their perceptions of sustainable funding in marginalized communities. So I'm continuing to write about how Black women leaders stand resilient in their leadership and stand resilient in their power to lead institutions, build institutions. And I've also been doing, for the last 4 years, working in global philanthropy around the world. So looking at supporting and continuing to support artists, artists at risk, Black women, not just Black women, but leaders of color
Mm-hmm.
in the global South and in marginalized communities, and how they continue to do the work in the face
Mm-hmm.
of fascism and authoritarianism, and continue to spread and do their work and continue to create art and culture, cultural programming that
Mm-hmm.
empowers communities. So I think that there's a multitude of things that I have that I want to talk about, that I want to write about. So there may be a couple iterations of a combination of that, like the intersection between art, culture, and spirituality. The
Nice.
intersection and what happens when art, culture, and spirituality intersect, and how that deeply works against cultural erasure and creates space for archives and creates space for deep narratives about resilience and about deeply rooted communities
Mm-hmm.
um, that are grounded in liberatory practices. So there's so much.
Yeah. Listen, but it's all needed.
Yes.
I'm sure in your own way in due time that you will,
Yeah.
you the direction will just light up for you.
Yeah.
As someone who is been in the nonprofit who is in the nonprofit sector and who's been working in philanthropy for over 10 years, yes, I feel seen because if anybody wants to write about the challenges, the struggles,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
demand,
Mhm.
just all of it. Yeah, because it's because a lot of times it does feel like I know I'm never alone, but a lot of times it does feel very like a straight up like solo act when we're talking about just sharing what it's
Oh yeah.
like, and so yeah, that definitely puts a smile on my face that you're thinking about writing to represent voices like mine. So thank you for
Mhm.
that. However it shows up, I'm
Yeah.
super grateful because
Yeah.
it is necessary. Um, yeah, I wanted you to, if you don't mind, like sharing a bit of advice. I'm not sure how you feel about giving advice digitally or just for anyone who's listening who is a writer, like anyone out there who is a writer who is looking to I guess to shift as a writer in the way to where writing becomes more of a sacred act for them. Like for me,
Mhm.
what that looks like for me is journaling, is having my
Mhm.
root book,
Mm-hmm.
And then that may not be for necessarily the public or
Right.
everybody
Right.
to be
Right.
published, but I'm thinking of, folks like a friend or a relative, or if I have
Mm-hmm.
children
Mm-hmm.
and grandchildren, something for them to have and for them to keep.
Yeah.
So that's what it that's how it shows up for me, and what that looks like for myself. But if you have any advice for anyone out there that is looking to, like I said, shift their writing to where it's more of a sacred act, and that could be if there's a ritual, if there's a prayer, some
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love your story and how you talked about how you spoke to your ancestors and how they just essentially showed up for you within your pen,
Mm-hmm.
writing
Mm-hmm.
along with you. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you have anything.
I mean, I think we have to get back to, if folks aren't there. I mean, I know a lot of folks are dedicated to their phones and wed to their
Mhm.
phones, wed to laptops and iPads and all that, all such. But there's something to be said for putting those things down and getting back to a pencil and paper, or pen and paper. Like I mentioned, my book started from writing, from actual
Mhm.
pen to pad. There's something very that happens within your brain and your sensibility in your body, that happens, that it's like movement, right? There's something that's, I'm an artist, a dancer, so there's something that happens when you allow, your body to move, and when the movement comes through your body, and as opposed to an actual, like, trying to conceptualize the movement, but when you actually do the movement, it comes differently. That's like when someone's teaching any art form, singing, dance, music, you actually have to do it. You have to feel the music, you have to hear it, you have to feel it in your body. So when you put that pen to pad and dedicate, I have multiple books dedicated to various things. If it's going to be, write your dreams down. I mean, like the dreams that you have when you wake up in the morning. Or write your dreams, your aspirations for life. Make a dedicated dream book. If it's about recipes, as you mentioned, if you have a manifestation book, write a book about things that you want to manifest and put them in affirmative. If it's an abundance or prosperity book, start to write down the things that affirming abundance and prosperity. Start to think about it intentionally in that way. Or if it's just going to be a book about, poetry, maybe it's a book of haikus. Maybe it doesn't have any formal structure, but don't
Mhm.
tie yourself to any one way or form. Just allow it to
Mm.
really, you know, have whatever comes to you. And it doesn't have to be any way, you don't have to have, like, oh, let me get my incense and some cup of tea and then, what. I mean, if
I,
that works for you
I'm about
too,
to say,
just,
if that's your jam, go
if that's
ahead.
your, go
I was gonna
ahead.
say, yeah, because I had
Yeah.
a couple of aunties. Anita Baker had to be played while they were
I will.
cleaning. So hey, if
Okay.
that's your jam, like, do
That
your
is,
thing.
I'm a tea person, so you will find many tea and types of teas, and that's the thing. Some people are, whatever gemstone. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is just lean into and just start. Just start. Just start, and just put it to pen to pad, and and just let it flow, you know, because I mean, I started some of those prayers, excuse me, in that book. I wrote in 1999, and I didn't publish them until 2010. And then some of them came in 2010. They came over time, and I kind of
Right.
compiled them together. But you never know. That's what I'm saying. Start today. You never know where it may not be published. It may not. It may become. You may find a platform for it or not, or it may become a healing balm for you later. You look back on it in your book, and it becomes a healing balm for you later on in life.
Do you have anything to add in terms of prayer? We
Say that one
talked
more time.
about,
Do I have?
sure, sure. Do you have anything? Can we dive into prayer one last time? Do you have anything to add when we're talking about prayer, like how you just shared advice when it comes to writing and someone wanting to make shifting that into more of like a sacred act or just making it their own and just starting? Do you have any advice when we're talking about as far as prayer? I decided to name your episode this episode when the tongue is a wand, the role of writing and prayer in survival. For me personally, I've always I was always taught that, you know, my words have power,
Yeah.
and and writing is super important, and it's my magic. So using both of those as and looking at them as these powerful
Yes.
tools, it's like
Yeah.
I'm unstoppable, which is why
Absolutely.
I always when I say I'm gonna do something, I put it in writing.
That's
If
right. That's
and because I can't, if it won't really stick in my brain if I don't do both. Just
yes.
saying what
Yes.
I'm gonna do and writing it down. And it's I don't know, I can't stress enough that, and that's something I'm not sure necessarily how to like how I shared, I am talking to my god kids about writing more for themselves, and it's kind of,
Yes.
it's not necessarily it's a little difficult teaching an 8-year-old about manifestation and affirmation
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always writing at school. But I wanted you to like tap a little bit about the importance of prayer when we're talking about our
Mm-hmm.
writings, speaking to our ancestors as we're writing, and asking God for any guidance
Mm-hmm.
when we are in like this difficult space. It's not
Yeah.
just brain
Yeah.
fog,
Yeah.
it's not just a
Yeah.
blockage, but we just may be in this
Yeah.
space where it's not all in alignment. Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
advice as far as how to, when it comes to
Yeah.
prayer, how to really like shift that?
Mm-hmm. Prayer for me is a conversation with God. It's one of the most intimate moments where I believe that God is listening deeply
Mm-hmm.
to me. And where I also get to affirm and get very close to the energy of divine consciousness that's in me, so that we become connected in a way that the divine consciousness and the divinity within me become one. And then that energy, that metaphysical energy, allows for transformation to happen, for manifestation to happen. And so the more that you affirm it with your tongue, the more that you
Mm-hmm.
write it, becomes an affirmation, and it affirms that not that which you want to happen, but that which already exists. We draw and attract things that we are, not what we want. So the more that I draw and pray to the things that I already am affirming, the closer and closer I get to that divine energy, that energy of that which I'm trying to aspire and that which I am already. And so it become a living embodiment. Of course, we're human beings, We go through life, we have challenges, but it becomes medicine that you can tap into at any given point and moment in your life. And I love the title. I love the title because I think that's what my life has been. I'm a mom of 5. I'm a single mom of 5, and I have had a series of multiple challenges in my life, and a series of multiple successes and joys. I have children from age 19, or soon to be 19, down to 8 years old. I'm also a mom who is raising a child that's disabled. She doesn't speak, she doesn't walk, and she's the embodiment for me of of what the energy of a person who lives without ego, without attachment, and with the deepest awareness of the closest thing to God. And she reminds me every day of what it means to live in a place, to live in the world without any attachments. Like she loves things, food, of course, and but she doesn't have a preference. She doesn't have, she doesn't choose one thing or the other. She doesn't have jealousy. She doesn't have envy. She doesn't have any of those emotionalities that often bring us out of alignment of with who we are. So these are all the things, many things that I've experienced, and I am a survivor. And I continue to survive, and I am the daughter of survivors. I am the granddaughter and the great-granddaughter and the great-great-daughter of women and men, and particularly women. I have to acknowledge my matrilineal line, who have survived multiple challenges. And I stand here today because of their resilience and their perseverance.
Thank you so much. This has been an honor. This has been a privilege. I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy listening to you. You're so soothing. This voice is so soothing.
Thank you.
I was like, I can't picture you yelling, but she was like, please, I got 5 kids. Like, please. It's like, I can yell. No, seriously, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, such an honor. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. This has been beyond what I thought it was going to be. I knew it was going to be beautiful and take us to church and beyond. Take us back outside. Take us back to really having those conversations that needed to be had without any judgment, any shame, any stigma, just giving it to us 100%. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayoka Wiles. It's been a pleasure. You have been listening to The Practice of a Hoodoo Baptist, covered by spirit, guided by blood. Until next time, thanks for listening.